Oh, this is hard when your sinuses are stuffed up. Oh. Oh, Metafix. I need my fix though. Vacation days, put it a day behind. Now what? Oh. Rain, sleet, snow. Metafix. Guys, gonna have to bear with me a little. Today I do have a bit of a cold. So, this week's Metafix, I'm going to try to stay as loud as I can and hope that you guys hear what I'm saying. But this week's, we are not covering a theme team like we did last week because that's not the only thing we do here on Metafix. On Metafix, we also got to talk about building a team that's just, that step above, the step beyond, the comic books. Don't get me wrong, we love the comic books here. But every so often, when that competitive edge takes a step, you kind of step away from the comic books and start to play by the numbers. So that's the whole point of Metafix for anybody not interested in that kind of stuff. We have lots of other videos of me and Amber playing against each other where we kind of step away from the meta. Other times we do step into it. So, alright. That said, this week we are talking about common phrases that you see out there. One of them is free actions. It is probably one of the newer, one of the scarier things happening out there, to be brutally honest. It kind of caught me off guard. We had a little bit of a fun streak for a period of time, and then I started watching what was happening in this game, and boy, did it change overnight. Actions as free actions are just bloody amazing. And the other thing we're going to be talking about, and I'm going to start with that, is a common phrase you'll find in the forums. It is the phrase of min-maxing. Min-maxing is pretty much what you hear in those words. A min-maxed character is a character you look at and you are spending the minimum amount of points for the maximum amount of output. I've got a couple prime examples, but explaining this, you generally, in the 300 point realm, you don't, remember, for those of you who are new to Metafix or just joining us, anything over 300 is a mess in my opinion, and therefore I don't really talk about in Metafix. So when we talk about teams and builds into 300 point metagame, that's where I'm keeping it. So anything under 300 points is general. 300 points or under is what we talk about. Now when I talk about min-maxing, it's one of the most common things to have to do in high-level competitive play. For those of you who go to Worlds, or some of you in our comments section are talking about going to ROCs, this is one of those major important aspects that you've got to look at in your team is, are you playing with a min-max team, or are you playing with a cohesive team, or a strategic team, that kind of thing, right? And a min-max, a team with a lot of min-max figures has the minimum, spending the least amount of points for as much as they can possibly get out of each of their figures. So, prime examples of those types of figures include the Blue Beetle, in my opinion. Simply because his trait. Now, his stats at a first glance for 94 points are, they're acceptable, to say the least. He's Mystics. He's got really reasonable stats, very short dial. This is the, of course, common figure number 009. But one of the things that makes him really big is the fact that in spite of his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 clicks of damage, he's got that trait where if he would take 3 or more damage, so that's like past his toughness, if he would take 3 or more damage, instead of taking any damage once per game, he takes an action token instead. So, effectively, he's got 9 clicks of health for 94 points. That's huge nowadays. I mean, back in Hyper Time, we had 48-point clicks with 10 clicks of health. But that was Solomon Grundy, and he was awesome, and so was Swamp Thing. But that's neither here nor there. The point I'm trying to make here is that in the modern metagame, 9 clicks for 94 points is pretty awesome. Now, there's ways around that, but you have to deal 2 damage to him at a time. So if you do that, you're taking at least 3 penetrating damage back for that. So controlling your damages, it's got its payoffs. So this figure at 94 points, you're looking at a high bargain, especially with his running shot, 6 range, 11 attack with Psychic Blast, and his damage power, which allows him probability control with himself or anybody targeting him. So overall, this is a great figure, just on the pure lowest point spectrum. Also in that spectrum falls the Iron Fist. Iron Fist, of course, starts with charge, 11 attack, 17 defense with combat reflexes and super senses, and is close combat expert, which has the added bonus of dealing extra damage if you roll 2 higher than your opponent's defense. Which is why I'd say about 80% of the time I give him +2 attack with his combat expert, as you get the most amount of output for that. So, I mean, Iron Fist at 80 points. Plus, he's got a reasonable dial with late dial. He's got one more click than the Blue Beetle we were just talking about. Plus, he's got 2 back-end dials of regeneration and 2 mid-dial willpowers. Plus, in addition to all of this, now he lacks Indomitable, but, you know, an 80-point figure, I guess it's okay that he's not Indomitable. The Blue Beetle wasn't Indomitable either. But he's got enhanced movement for ignoring hindering, elevated, and characters. That means pretty much walls and outdoor blocking stop him. So, that's one of those things to take into effect. Now, in general, I actually brought 2 other figures who I thought fall under the Minmax title, but one of them falls into the other portion, which is the non-free actions, free actions thing. But both of them are also prime. One of the things you'll notice is a lot of the prime figures are fairly undercosted for what you're getting. They got high output, sometimes lower clicks, but like for what you're paying for them in points, you're getting a fair bit. Which is why I got to put out the argument, you're allowed 1 prime figure period per team. This is not like the unique rule where you can't have 2 copies of the same unique. This is, you can only have 1 prime figure on your team, period. Now that said, a lot of them are great. Some of them stand out more than others. Some of them I don't have. They are hard to get. Silver Centurion stands out as pretty awesome. The fact that he's an attacker who's got an extra attack that can deal 7 damage, and that's amazing. But let's not forget old school Brother Voodoo. I talked about him last week in Mystical. I got talking about this week in both as kind of a bridge into our second part. Actually, I'm going to keep Alyosha and Brother Voodoo for later. Both of them are great. Both of them are very low cost for high output, especially with Alyosha with comparable stats to Iron Fist, plus the extra lion. You know, he's very reasonable. All he lacks is a lot of the they ignore terrain. Brother Voodoo, on the other hand, again, we can get into him. Next up, we got Phantom X. I put him under Minmax for a very specific reason. He never has to leave your starting area. That's pretty amazing. I mean, his lack of Indomitable is coverable in our next Minmax fig. But his stats are very reasonable, and the fact that he gets Eva to move out for him, and Eva adds to him outwit from far away from him, adds toughness to him while she's on the board. She's got 17 defense with super senses. I've actually had one game I played against somebody where we were both playing Phantom X, and Ava's only killed themselves or each other. Nothing could touch Ava. She's an amazingly obnoxious robot. All in all, the fact that he's got range combat expert with 11 attack, as well as, you know, the fact that Ava's moving around for him is fantastic. Plus, he's got 2 rollouts when you think about it. He's got a white movement power, which gives him stealth, running shot, and shape change. Add that to the super senses. He's got a rollout for the shape change if you can manage to see him through his stealth. Then, should you hit him after him rolling the shape change, he's got the rollout on the super senses. Plus, he's a sharpshooter, so if you get in, he can still range combat expert you. Plus, he's got ignore elevated, ignore hindering for his movement. Chop this all together, he's, for 142 points, he is an army in and of himself, who he himself doesn't have to move and has Eva to do all the work for him. Especially with Eva having Outwit to help him shoot through her. So we have that as well. Now, capping off the Minmax, this is kind of new from AVX. I like to cover one AVX figure in most of these things. My next topic doesn't really get covered with the AVX tournament format too much, but I want to talk about somebody who did recently come out, and that is Black Panther. At 100 points, I consider him a steal, and I want to point out why. First of all, his movement ignores characters, and this is the ignores characters period. So when he's moving, he ignores plasticity, etc., and everything. Plus, he's got stealth and ignores hindering, so he's not hindered by his stealth. He's got a wild card team ability, which is pretty amazing. He's got Blade's Claws and Super Senses. He's got a trait. Now, here's the kicker. This is the thing that puts him over the top, in my opinion. He's got that trait that lets him give any character that shares a keyword with him and within 4 squares, willpower. He shares a couple of keywords with him. So this Minmax character just got min-maxed up a little bit more. Add to that his white damage power, which gives him Empower, Outwit, and Leadership. And the Leadership, if he had to roll a 6, takes a token not only off of a character next to him, but from him himself. So he doesn't really, he's got a 1 in 6 chance of giving himself willpower. How bloody awesome is that? And it's not even just like willpower. I mean, this guy is really cool. And he's got a lot of potential in the metagame, if you ask me. I haven't had a chance to really attempt to break him. I got to use him in my tournament, but, oh man, that's a video we got to do soon. And I don't want to talk about that. Coming soon, Jason and Amber's AVX month 2. So that said, this guy is a big boost to a lot of min-max, like minimum cost, maximum output characters, and he isn't that much at 100 points, especially, I mean, he's got what you could call a relatively shallow dial, but just about every click on his dial can do some amazing things. So, that said, I'm not going to call him uber meta. I call him good for AVX, and he's got a couple plans. I've got a couple plans for some teams to try it with him myself. We might see them in videos, we might not. They're going to be experiments, to be brutally honest, so if I don't do well with them, I experiment. That said, we're going to move on from min-maxing, because I hate saying that word, to the free action. Oh, I do have one more portion to talk about with the min-max. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the utility belt. We all know the utility belt. It is 14 points added to a character, intermittently making him 100 points better. Say what you will about resources. They're in the game. We have to suck it up and deal with them. I personally have no issue with them, but, you know, because they make them available. But my point of view, going far beyond, this tool as a tool in any team is fabulous. It takes any figure that's out there and makes them great. Like, there's nothing else I can say about that. The utility belt is an awesome piece, and it is the minimum cost for the maximum output. I mean, even when you get clicks without bonus numbers, I mean, there's clicks where you get +1s, +2s to all your stats. Those clicks are awesome. There's +1s, and then there's clicks without them. But there's, like, cowls that make your characters amazing, too. All in all, I'd say this piece is still a bit of a game breaker. It's still really good in a Book of Skulls heavy metagame. Book of Skulls I'm going to be talking about. I'm not sure if it's next metafix or a couple metafixes from now, where I've kind of come up with my ideas of my own. Anyway, that said, let's talk free actions now. Free actions. I swear this time I promise we're talking about free actions. A couple notable things, of course, is the Brother Voodoo. Even beyond the fact that he's got the Heroes for Hire team ability, which, you know, is a little less good with the diminishing damage ability, or rule, rather, where every time you make an attack, your damage value gets -1. Brother Voodoo's free action Mind Control is amazing. In addition to the fact that if he's adjacent to a character, He can use Smoke Cloud as a free action. Also, he's got Poison. And Prop. Now, the fact of the matter is, the non-free action is a free action thing. Steps out because the game is built around taking an action, and then you're done with that character. By introducing a series of characters that get free actions that, you know, would normally for other characters be a power action or other action, you kind of put that character above and beyond awesome. It's impossible to deny. So a character like Brother Voodoo, who can now move and mind control, or sit there, shoot, and then mind control, he really stands out as practically amazing. I wouldn't say he's broken, because I've seen him die many a time. Especially with Precision Strike out there to stop him. If you do see a Brother Voodoo, of course, get that Precision Strike ready, because he's going to be a target for it. But his high stats to start are pretty good. But when I talk about taking non-free actions as free actions, you gotta understand, being able to do more than one thing in a single turn stands out as pretty friggin' amazing. Think about that in the whole realm of the Heroclix rules. It is the ultimate rule breakers. There's that unspoken rule of movement costs an action, shooting costs an action, close combat actions costs an action, breaking away costs an action, power actions costs an action, and you gotta take an action token to do that. Now, if you can turn around and take something that isn't normally a free action and do that as though it was, it was just like an outwit or perplex, that stands out amazingly. One of the things that really made a splash was these guys in the Golden Age. Now, since nerf, the GCPD Cruiser doesn't do as well as it doesn't do exactly what it used to do. Where it used to do penetrating damage. Now it doesn't do penetrating damage. But the GCPD team ability still stands out as pretty amazing. These guys, though not game-breaking anymore, they're so good because not having to roll for damage is awesome. And the fact is the GCPD ATA kind of adds to that. Now, there was a team that made the top 16, maybe top 8 as well, of the worlds. Was piloted by probably one of the I'd have to call him one of the Heroclix greats, George Masu, the man responsible for the Black Adam from the Superman set. He piloted 2 GCPD motorcycles with the GCPD team ability. I don't have the motorcycles, unfortunately, but using the ATA, which allows you to take a movement action at the beginning of your turn as a free action. He had Lex Luthor on his team. Lex Luthor has a white movement power that allows him to use phasing, and when he moves up to half his movement, he can take a ranged combat action as a free action after that. I didn't even think of that. Now, granted, that gets a little bit not so good with diminished damage. Oh, is that Psychic Blast? Shit. Now, the fact that Luthor is a wild card means you don't have to pay the points for him to have that ATA. So you got 2 19-point figures with a 2-point ATA, 21 points each. You got Lex Luthor. Both those figures have barrier. Do you see a problem with this? Because I do. If it's on the other side of the board, if I was piloting it, I wouldn't see a problem with it at all. No idea what you're talking about. Why are you back over here for? Oh, that's right. Eva's a free action. Making Eva is a free action with Minmax, and there's any character that makes figures, for the most part, either has to get hit on a Madrox, or multiple man, or has to take a power action. Got a blank there. A la Squirrel Girl. So, ultimately, or they start extra with the figure a la Alyosha Craven. I swear I'm coming to him next. So, as you can imagine, very awesome. A couple other figures that fall into this category would be the Void Sentry, who I unfortunately lack. I couldn't bring him to the table to show you guys today. There is, of course, Alyosha Craven. Now, Alyosha Craven is very specific to animals, which doesn't make it seem that great. But if you're starting to watch the figures that are coming out with the animal keyword, they're getting plentiful, and they're getting good. One that stands out a lot, and I'll be very shocked if at least one player doesn't play this team, would be the Serpent. Now, the Serpent playable at 200 points falls into the 300-point metagame, which makes him a threat to competitive play. In addition to which, playing with Alyosha lets him move for free, And you also have a 4-figure team if you put Alyosha. I say Alyosha, a lot of people say Aloysia. It's up to you guys. But playing Alyosha with the Serpent and a Loki. A 30-point Loki. Because guess what? The 30-point / 100-point Loki also has the animal keyword. The animal keyword is very cool. It's becoming very playable. It's no longer just a joke. And characters like Alyosha and his lion and the serpent kind of point out that it's a team ability, team keyword to be watched. Now, the fact that Alyosha only offers a free movement, kind of okay, but you're talking also about giving these characters effectively a full movement charge or running shot. I'll say it again. A full movement charge or running shot. If you caught that, yeah. So, as you can imagine, the free actions is, like, non-free actions is free actions, is another thing that's really entered the metagame as something that can be very frightening. It means there's a lot of things that can happen over the course of a turn that can catch you off guard. If you guys want to go back in time to some of our videos, there was a game I played where it was armor keyword versus, I believe, X-Men. And I really abused free actions as non-free actions as free actions very heavily with this team. And it's something you've got to be ready for. For those of you who are entering the competitive metagame, new to it, those of you who are in it already, pay attention to those things, because there's going, like, when you build your team and say, wow, my output's awesome, his output might not look so good, but when he's making 18 actions in a 3-action game, and most of them are free actions, you can imagine how insane it can get. So, all in all, in a nutshell, that's what we've got to talk about this week. So we had talked about min-maxing, we talked about non-free actions as free actions. So when you get a chance, down below, I want to hear about your favorite free action, non-free actions, free action figures or uses. Your favorite minimum cost for maximum output figures. I know there's a couple out there that are probably definitely going to be make the down below. Try to keep it modern. Try to keep it under 300 points, of course. And talk to us about how you deal with these types of things. There are ways of dealing with a lot of minimal point cost figures for, high output kind of stuff. And there's ways of dealing with, of course, the bat belt. But what I really want to hear about you guys talk about is whether this is one of those things in the metagame that you think we have to deal with, or one of those things that you kind of say is there, and either accept it as your own strategy, or just play as though it exists and not worry about it. So, that's been this week in Meta Fix. I've got my fix, and hope to see you guys next week. Later this week, expect to see our AVX recap from this weekend. Spoiler alert, it went better for Amber.